Hey, what's up, everyone? Renee here with a special announcement. Just letting everyone know that we here at the Movie Time podcast stand strong with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA during this tough and important time in the industry. Even though neither one of us are members of any of the unions, we want to make sure that we do our part to show our support and solidarity with those on the picket lines and those who are currently out of work. First and foremost, we are fans of film and cinema, and we're going to continue to show our love and passion of the works that are put forth by the true creators that make these movies possible for all of us to see. That said, we will continue to do our show as usual, but always ensure that we put more emphasis on the writers and actors involved in the works we talk about week to week. We will also continue to stay up to date on the strikes and make sure we do what we can to spread the word on how to help those affected. We have included links to special funds and ways to donate to ensure that those affected will, at the very least, get support to live while these strikes continue. We encourage you to do your research, and we will provide as much info as possible through the links provided. If you have any questions or have other ideas on how to further show support, by all means, please let us know through the comments. Thanks again for all of your support.
I know we're going to get into Barbie here in a second, but I was amazed by, I knew it was going to be smart. It was directed by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. I thought it would still have an overall tone of corporate schlock or, board game movie, video game movie, IP kind of stuff. It was so much deeper than that. I am so glad that they gave Greta Gerwig this vehicle. Most other writer-directors would have done a fine job, and we would have gone and been like, oh yeah, that was entertaining for a Barbie movie. That's kind of what I expected. It was a little better, at least with the way that they talked about how they went into making it even before Greta Gerwig was hired. But damn, she really made a high quality piece of film. Like, I don't know where this ranks on like all-time movies or where to rank on my list of all-time movies. I need to see it maybe 2 or 3 more times and really digest it. I was appalled, and there was multiple times in the theater I'm just holding my head going, I can't believe she's doing this with this movie. It was so much further than I expected. Even once I knew it was Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig in the writer chair and Greta Gerwig directing, I still didn't realize it was going to go that hard and that deep. So I'm excited about getting into it with you.
When I first saw this movie back in February, and again, some background story, and I can talk about it now, obviously, because the movie's out. I was invited to a test screening of this movie in February. Kind of a very similar situation like with Mission Impossible. But with the exception is I knew I was seeing Barbie for this test screening because they advertised this as such. It's like, you are invited to a test screening of Barbie. The minute I saw that email, I'm like, hell yeah. I'm going, even though I had to drive to Jersey for that. But it was like worth it for me.
It's one of the only movies that you drive to Jersey for.
Right.
Like, okay, there's so much hype going into this. Like, all right, we'll do it. We'll pay the toll.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it so much. Yeah, like I will dedicate a day just to go out to Jersey just to see this damn movie as early as possible. And when it's a test screening, I'm seeing the movie where it's like missing stuff. Like a lot of the opening credits were missing. As they were flashing on the screen as she's doing her Barbie thing. The music wasn't all there, so I didn't hear like the Lizzo song playing in the background. That was like narrating every little thing that she was doing. That's
that made a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
Getting you in the mood for it.
1000%.
That's essentially a different movie. At least that part.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Your reaction from then makes more sense with that in mind.
No,
it was that unfinished.
Yeah, absolutely. But you get basically the basic story there. Like you and to be honest, from what I saw in this now final cut, it remained intact for the most part. Like they didn't really deviate from anything from what I originally saw. Obviously,
with those test screenings, they'll change an ending entirely, or get rid of a whole character, or these people fell in love, now they don't. And so it makes sense that the bones were intact back in February, because that's not that long ago for when you're talking about editing a movie, post-production, all that stuff.
I mean, the one thing I will say is that they did, and it was a little bit unfortunate. They did had a post-credit scene that included Helen Mirren. So Helen Mirren actually showed up on screen as kind of like a breaking the fourth wall nod to the audience that she's the one
Wow.
talking the whole time
I
and all
missed
that.
that.
Yeah,
What happened? What happened
I,
in that? Are you
I,
allowed to say?
I
It's okay if you're not.
the thing is, it happened so fast that I can't even remember. I just knew that.
Okay.
Oh, I was like, oh, there's Helen, and she acknowledges that she was kind of like the narrator and all that, or she was
Kind of
in
Ferris
your
Buellery almost in a way,
right.
like just a little quick
Yeah,
boom, say a few words and then dip.
kind of like I was the one in your head the whole time and all this,
Okay.
and
Huh.
I also love the fact that they kept that line. And again, we're going to be going into full spoilers here. I don't think there's any. It's not worth kind of like just cutting around it. I just want to talk freely about both of these movies and all that.
You love
Um,
movies,
s-
you've already seen them by the time this
yeah,
comes out. You already did the double feature, or you're waiting 3 weeks until a seat opens up at the IMAX 70 millimeter in New
right,
York City or LA, one of the
right.
30 screens worldwide,
Right,
whatever.
exactly. But yeah, like I love that they kept the line where where Margot is crying and saying that she doesn't feel pretty and beautiful, and Helen kicks in and is like, we like kind of like we know Margot Robbie is not the right person to kind of sell this point, like kind of like just go with it, like like I thought
Yeah,
that was so smart.
clever. So good.
Um, but yeah, back then and even more so now, I knew that this movie was very smart. I think I think it's too smart for its own good, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I just think for the type of property that the movie is based on, it's going to be too smart for the audience that is going to get attracted to this, or at least in the beginning. And I think when word of mouth spreads more and people start understanding what the movie is really about, then I think you're going to start seeing a kind of a shift in attendance. And it's going to be people like you and I, and but more of the female demographic who are like you and I, who are going to want to go see this movie, and they're going to want to see what Greta is trying to say here. Because yeah, Mattel gave her a lot of freedom in her, both her and Margot, in doing what they wanted to do with these characters. Because like many other IP, Mattel is very protective of their stuff. Just like how Hasbro is very protective of Transformers, this and that, da, da, da. And I'm sure they had some notes of like, we want to make sure you at least cover this or cover that, whatever the case is. But for the most part, it looked like they just gave her free reign to do whatever the hell she wanted to do.
Which, if
Um,
you look at the backstory, they kind of had to do because they lost some original
right.
writers, the people who were attached to it, because there was they felt too much restriction
Yeah.
from the production team when they were saying, we want you to basically remake Lego Movie. And apparently there was so much pressure and they kept saying that, no, more Lego
Mm-hmm.
Movie concept, which they kind of do. But Lego Movie, I think you're right. This one is a level, maybe one or two levels deeper than Lego Movie.
Yeah.
Lego Movie was good at appealing to general audiences and people who wanted to think a little more deeply about it. This one is more catering to the people who are going to think more deeply about it. Word of mouth telling people what this movie is. I think you're basically going to get that second wave of audiences being a very different group of people,
Yeah.
because what'll happen is it's kind of similar to Lego Movie, where I was one of those people in that second wave where like I waited till people saw it and I was like, yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to see that. That's some terrible, it's a commercial. They're just selling products.
Yeah.
And then people came back to me and were like, no, it's actually really good, high quality movie,
Mm-hmm.
like on some Paddington 2 shit. I was like, okay, I'll go see it.
Yeah.
Loved it, loved it, loved it. But what who will be kind of not seeing it is we're just gonna call them like normies, people who don't want to think deeply about this stuff, people who just wanted the phone it in Barbie movie.
Yeah.
Um Folks who are like going to be offended by some of the things in here, who like don't embrace equality among genders and races, etc.
Mm-hmm.
They're called bigots. People who just wanted like a silly escapist, whatever, nothing to think about at all.
Yeah.
I think of it as like the Thanksgiving crowd, like the movie that you can take your niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, and grandma to. This isn't going to get that group of folks just going, yeah, everybody's going to love it, come through, because you can't. It's unavoidably deeper. Whereas Lego, you could kind of still just zone out and enjoy
Mm-hmm.
it. And I think this one had a lot of great jokes, but I'm aware it's not for everyone. So instead, what's probably going to happen is I'll be talking to people like my friends, going like, and which I've already done. No, trust me. I know you're a cinephile. I know you were
Yeah.
suspicious about Barbie, which if you know Greta Gerwig and know about Baumbach, you know it's going to at least be quality enough.
Yeah.
Those people may have been going anyway, but it'll be the people who are one round more skeptical.
Yeah.
Like the Letterboxd bros who are a little hardcore, a little more militant
Hmm.
about their taste. The people who would go to war if Christopher Nolan was in charge, was the general. Those folks, I think, are going to get pulled into the movie, and it'll be thought of as more of a piece of like cinephile, like a history,
Hmm.
great quality film, rather than Lego Movie, which maybe towed that line a little bit better.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because watching this movie, it did remind me a lot about Lego Movie. Like there were some things that really, in my mind, called back to that. But it also called back to many other things because you could kind of see Greta's influence from like the movies I'm sure she grew up watching. I reference Elf with this movie, you know, like kind of like a fish out of water coming from a fantastical place into the real world and kind of getting smacked in the face with reality and all that. Like I felt
It's
like a
funny that
lot
Will
of
Ferrell's in
that.
all three of those movies you talked
Right.
about, Lego
It's so
Movie
true.
and Barbie, where
Yeah.
he's in the real world, and Elf,
Yeah.
he's the fish out of water that goes into the real world.
Right. It's so
Sorry.
true. And I'm pretty sure that was pretty much done on purpose too. Like yeah, Greta and Noah, they're smart enough to kind of think that way. I'm pretty sure that was very, very purposeful for that. Um, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I felt like the whole opening was very similar to that.
Mm.
You know, kind of like
Hmm.
putting you in the kind of that mindset and reality that this person lives in, and kind of having that play out to kind of set the tone, right? And I felt like it had a lot of that going into it. But yeah, it's
I'm getting a little bit of
interesting.
Clueless, like a smart comedy about
Sure.
ditzes, where it's
Yeah.
self-aware and
Yeah.
the characters are actually smarter than they let on, kind of
Right.
thing. I'm
Absolutely.
guessing that might be in the repertoire
Yeah,
of
I mean, there's
influence.
again so many. Like you could put Grease in this movie because they had some dance scenes and an
Oh yeah,
amazing dance off
love that.
between Ryan
Yes.
Gosling and Simu Liu. I mean, so good. But yeah, it's going to be really really interesting because I again last night when I went to see it, I went to see it. I had to drive like 45 minutes out to a place called New Rock City because that was the only theater that I had access to that had 70 millimeter for Oppenheimer. So I was going to go there and then watch Barbie also at the same time. And the whole day I was there, I saw families with their little 4-year-old kids, like their little daughters. Everyone was decked out in pink and all that. I saw like several princesses walking into the theater and all that. And I said to myself, "Oh, poor you! You're gonna have no
Oh
idea what you're
no.
getting into. Like you
Oh
have,
no.
because this movie is gonna go way over their heads. If anything, maybe their parents appreciated it, but." There are certain people that I'm sure they were just probably pretty much confused about because when I did finally got to see the movie, it was a lot of teenagers and like 20 something year olds, right? But everyone was there on full force. I saw a lot of girlfriends. I saw a lot of groups of girls going to watch this movie.
A lot of
And
pink. I
a
loved walking to
lot
the
of
theater,
pink.
even when Oppenheimer Day, because I saw Barbie Wednesday night, the
Yeah.
early blowout
Oh,
screening,
you so you went to the blowout party?
wall to wall pink. It was
Yeah.
insane. I
Yeah.
was like, wait, like it looks like the color of the wall changed because there was
Yeah.
so much damn pink.
Yeah.
And then the next day, it was still similar, but then you also had the Oppenheimer, the people with the all black New York uniform
Yep.
next to the pink people. It was great. I
Right.
loved it.
It's what a weekend to go to the movie theater because you're gonna have such a
Hell yeah.
contrast of people going to watch these movies. But
We
yeah,
might not ever get that again. And also, there was a guy with the half
yeah,
Barbenheimer pink and black shirt, which shout out to
nice,
that guy.
nice,
Yeah.
nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, like you had your lot of groups, but at the end of the movie, I felt like half of the audience that saw the movie with me were lost. Were kind of like confused. And I think they were expecting a different movie than what they got. And this is not I wouldn't say that this is a problem because of the way Greta Gerwig did the movie or how the movie was written or directed. It's the property. The property kind of attracts a certain crowd because they think of it as, oh, this is going to be like Spice World. This is going to be like a Barbie movie, like you know, kind of like how Spice World was big when that came out during that time. But it's not. It's a very very smart, witty movie. Dark at some times as far as humor is concerned and kind of the realities of the world. Self, importance of self, where one belongs, kind of like who am I? A lot of who am I situations. And
that poor 4-year-old girl in her princess outfit having her first existential crisis.
oh my
when
god,
the movie does the needle drop of, you will ever think about death?
which again, I laughed so hard the first time that line dropped in February, and the whole audience laughed very much so. Last night, half the audience laughed. And I think I was the loudest out of them all because that line still gets me because it's just so out of nowhere. But again, if you know Greta's humor, you know Noah's humor. Like I said, again, if you saw White Noise and you saw Ladybird, you know kind of the movie you're getting into because it has that humor sensibility in it there. But yeah, it's a lot of deep, feminist messaging, but also messaging of equality and acceptance. And I love the cast because you had all races and all genders represented, which is how it should be. And that's kind of like the message that Barbie has been trying to put out there for a long time, where Barbie can be all of these things to kind of empower women to do all that. But there's also, there's a black Barbie, there's a Hispanic Barbie, there's, a Barbie in a wheelchair. And I love that they showed all that. So if you are a fan of Barbie and I guess kind of the lore of Barbie, you got everything in this movie because they referenced everything, even down to the pregnant Midge, the Alan character, which I thought was hilarious, played by Michael Cena, and the rejects. Michael Cera, sorry.
Wait.
John Cena was a mermaid who was hanging out in the merman.
I don't know.
Who was hanging? Who was hanging out with Dua Lipa, who was the other mermaid there. So this movie just had a lot of great little nods to the property and all that, especially like the rejects and discontinued Barbies too. So if you're a fan and you're familiar with all that, then this movie has a lot of that stuff for you. But it also has a lot of not inside jokes, but just dark humor based off of what is really happening in society today. And I feel like they pulled it off really brilliantly. But I just do think, unfortunately, it's a bit too much for the type of audience that will get attracted to this movie initially. Hey, no, I'm not Ryan Reynolds, but I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with the Mint Mobile ads that he puts out there, whether it's on TV, YouTube, social media, or what have you. And I'm sure a lot of you are very, wondering and very skeptical that how good is Mint Mobile? Is it really worth all the hype and all the, huge discounts every month and all the promotions and stuff like that? Well, I was very much like you. And late last year, I decided to take the plunge and try it out myself because I was honestly tired of paying so much money every month on my cell phone bill. I was a huge long-term Verizon customer, and I was paying $80 a month on my cell phone bill, which is ridiculous. Even given the fact that, I'm not really working a regular job like I used to. So saving money is important to me. But of course, I don't want to sacrifice quality in my cell service, especially when it comes to data and all that. So I decided to give it a shot. And I have to say, I am extremely pleased with the service I'm getting. I haven't noticed any drop in quality. And, for what I'm paying, I feel like I'm definitely getting more bang for my buck. And I want to be able to share that experience with you so that if you're in the same boat as I was, maybe it's time for you to give it a shot yourself. And right now, they have this amazing offer where you can sign up for them and you will be able to get 3 months unlimited data for $15 a month for your first 3 months. I mean, that is an insane discount. And I highly recommend you check it out and try it for yourself if you're looking for a change. Switching over from your cell, service is not going to be difficult. I did it it didn't take long at all to do it. As soon as I got the kit and my SIM card in the mail, I was able to switch it out and bing, bang, boom, all said and done. if you're looking for a new phone and you're happening to maybe eyeing one of those new Google Pixel phones, they have a special offer where you could save $200 on a brand new phone and receive 6 months of free service when you purchase a device and 6 months of service. So right now, I think is a good time more than any to give this a shot for yourself. So check out the link I have especially provided for you in the description of this video, this episode here, and give Mint Mobile a shot. And if you do, let me know what you think about it, because I was, again, pleasantly surprised and very happy with how everything turned out. But I think overall, I'm just happy to be saving a lot of money every month on my cell phone bill. And I think you'll be happy too. So, Mint Mobile, check out the link in the description. And thanks for checking them out. Thanks, Mint Mobile. Hey everyone, just a quick message here that this episode is brought to you by a new shop that I just launched. That's right, popculture.shop is a new merch shop where you can not only find Low-Key Geek and eventually MovieTime merchandise, but you will find merchandise dedicated to some of the biggest things in pop culture at the moment. Whether it's movies, TV, video games, memes, or anything of the like, you'll find some of the homages to some of the biggest things that are happening currently at the time. You also eventually will find some cool retro throwbacks in here and there. The shop just launched, so bear with me. I'm filling in the inventory, but you'll find new stuff dropping every week. But to help celebrate the launch of this brand new merch shop, I'm giving all of you, the listeners, subscribers here at the Low-Key Geek channel, a nice little discount to check it out. So if you use the code LOWKEYGEEK at checkout, you'll get yourself a nice little 15% discount. So definitely check it out. This is another great way to help support the channel and show your love and support for everything that we do here. But it's also a brand new venture of my own, just going out into the retail market. So any support that you could throw our way would be greatly appreciated. So once again, that is Pop Couture, popculture.shop, popculture.shop, a shop for geeks who are chic.
Because let's get into that, because my theater was Lincoln Square.
Yeah.
It's going to be essentially like green-haired Bernie bro folks, and there was a decent bit of pink-wearing girlfriend groups, etc. But nonetheless, basically anyone living in Manhattan, working in Manhattan, going to school at NYU, etc., everyone's going to be, for the most part, pretty familiar with third and fourth wave feminism.
Yeah.
Going to probably be whatever level of, like, at least having those conversations in a living room on accident. Sometimes the house parties, everything's just geared more lefty. And even your dumb, boring house party can quickly become a woke congregation and debating about, intersectionality and everything else like that. Like, I don't think these concepts would be foreign to anyone in that theater, probably. And I didn't see anybody under the age of 18, I'm going to guess. Maybe a couple exceptions, but off memory, I didn't notice anything like that. I didn't notice any families at all. I thought that's an interesting distinction. I'm curious how this movie will fare as time goes on and more reviews come out. I was surprised, as mentioned before, how nuanced and deep it got. I thought there'd be a message there. It was a very complicated message that gets into the contradictions that are inherent within the message it's talking about, and it actually gets into them and then talks about them and becomes like a meta message movie. I think this was a perfect movie for thirds. If you want to call current feminism fourth wave feminism, you can. Some people say it's just an extension of third wave feminism. But if you want to look at it as essentially Barbie as a product is kind of born into second wave feminism in that era. And now this movie is kind of going through that and catching it up to current feminism. It's absolutely brilliant in having that same dialogue that's been happening in regards to that within the movie itself, and having the dialogue that's within feminism with kingdom and kin and the masculine, the patriarchy, etc. And it's having all of these things happen within the movie, which I think is brilliant because Barbie has become a complicated figure and they deal with it in the movie.
Yep.
They deal with it on meta levels and they deal with it on very literal, specific levels. I loved how far they went into it. I don't think it's necessarily even worth summarizing all of it here because it's so deep that we could literally just recite the whole movie and talk about what it's saying about this and that. And
Yeah.
that's the movie is you could just play this in a lecture hall, and this is its own little symposium on feminism and consumerism. My question, and I think this is more theoretical. I'm assuming you didn't interview these families afterward, but just based on vibes or how you would assume this goes.
Hmm.
There are times where a movie like Get Out will actually move the needle on social justice issues, and people will have deep conversations in the car on the way home.
Yeah.
And there are ways in which movies can be just as important and sometimes more so than a protest, than a speech, than a politician, because these things are affecting people with their families,
Hmm.
where they live, and the person can have longer ramifications than someone who is just not going to watch the news, not aware of what's happening, where people aren't able to avoid it if they're going to go see the movie. And they might go in like Get Out. They may have just thought it was going to be a horror movie. And then they have a really deep talk
Hmm.
afterward, like so many people did. Do you think that this movie would have that effect, or do you think it more so? The question is, I think, do you think people were offended, bothered, shaken up a little bit, or do you think it was more, it was going over their heads, and the conversation on the drive home might be more like, well, that was confusing, that was weird, I didn't get it, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
No, no,
As like the options for, because I wasn't in your theater, I have my own thoughts on how that might go, but I'm curious for your take.
yeah, no, I totally get what you're putting out there. I think if you were to ask that question to people who live in different parts of the country, you're gonna get different answers.
Yeah.
So if you were like in the Midwest, I have a feeling a lot of people are gonna get offended by this movie. In my theater last night,
God,
I
that's
I
wild to me,
I think
but I know what you mean.
yeah, I think a lot of people, a lot of the stuff just went over their head. I think for a more general audience who was expecting a more lighter tone, a more fun, entertaining disco party for 2 hours, I know they didn't get what they were expecting. And I heard people even saying as I was walking out, oh, this part, the saving grace of this movie was this guy or that girl or when this person showed up, because it made it sound like otherwise this movie was terrible, like
Right.
that,
Okay.
because again,
Interesting.
I think they went into it just expecting a mindless good time that I guess you would expect with a major IP movie, because that is kind of what we're accustomed to getting with everything that we've gotten so far. You go to a Transformers movie, you're expecting mind-numbing action with no real story, right? You're going to watch any of the Marvel movies. You might get some story there, but again, you're going for the special effects and whatever the case is.
Can
The
be more
fact,
escapism, a
right?
little bit more Mission Impossible without even the deep questions that Mission Impossible raises.
Absolutely. But here you're getting a major IP that's geared towards women, that we haven't really gotten a women centric IP movie like this. And again, a big budgeted
Mm.
movie too, that has a very heavy message all throughout, or messages all throughout. But people were expecting the mind numbing, nonsensical, let's just have a good time kind of thing, you know? And I think that's what's going to throw a lot of people off. Now, will the conversation on the ride home help and kind of just explore those like messages that were sprinkled on throughout? I hope so, because I think that
Yeah.
that's really the main purpose of this movie. It's just like, even though most of it was tongue in cheek, it's like, no, this is the reality that we live in. The whole thing about Barbie was built around a time to do one thing, but it didn't really affect the outside world too much so. So now there has to be a switch, a change in realities and the way of thinking, and how the real world, how that would change a property like this, and how that affects this kind of not make believe but imaginary type of existence, and how that could affect kind of
Right.
societies like that, right? The whole
People are in a
patriarchy and
bubble,
everything.
literally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
We're talking about
um
bursting a bubble in that way, like a
right,
conceptual bubble, a political, socio-political bubble,
right,
um, just even being in denial about the state of the world and like, oh yeah, that doesn't affect me,
exactly.
etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I thought they handled a lot of that stuff brilliantly, from Margot referring to herself as kind of like stereotypical Barbie, to now becoming
Mm.
like an ordinary person and wanting to be human and wanting to know how it is to really live a fulfilling life, instead of portraying a persona that she was kind of meant to portray. I love that whole story plot line there. But then I also love the Ryan
I
Gosling
cried.
plot line. The Ryan Gosling plot line of like, I was made for you. I was made to be the Ken to your Barbie. I don't know who I am. And then when he found out in the
Yeah.
real world, wait a minute, men get all the respect. Oh, I got to tell the homeboys back home. And then look how it changed the dynamic there and everything like that. And I love how it even played
Incel
in.
Ken
Yeah,
who listens to too much Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and
right.
Andrew
Yeah,
Tate, who's like, men
yeah,
are supposed to have horses and cars. What's going
right.
on with this society?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Holy
I
shit.
should
It's
take it by force. Get out of here, bro.
it
But
was
it
just
was
so
so
funny.
silly and
Yeah.
lighthearted. I'm glad it didn't actually lean into some of the more violent
No,
incel tropes,
yeah,
but instead it was
yeah,
just the absurdity of
yeah.
that logic.
Yeah. And the fact that it didn't have to go that way, because it was enough.
No,
It was enough just to
yeah.
say like this, just a small way of thinking can change this bubble that you are living in. And how now all the Barbies that were doing everything, they're all now in bikinis serving the men and all that, so
Mm.
giving foot massages and the
What
like.
was it? American Ferrera compared it to, I might get the history of it wrong, but
Mm.
essentially the Spanish invading
Oh
a
yeah.
local group, and then they bring the influenza or smallpox or something, and they just didn't
Right.
have the defenses for it. And they're like, yeah, Barbie Land didn't have any defenses for patriarchy because they hadn't
Right.
dealt with it before.
Right.
That was a really good metaphor for
Yeah.
that. Like, it just takes one small thing, and then now you have, there was almost like Fight Club vibes going on for
Oh
part of it,
yeah.
like conceptually,
Uh-huh.
which I love that's just like in the DNA of this movie.
Right.
Um, I think uh, there are going to be people who are offended by this movie. I'm hoping that they are shaken up by it, and I hope
Mm-hmm.
because this movie is in some ways like a feminist symposium or a panel of ideas, that those folks at least will be encountering concepts that they until then had been in their bubble and filtered out. Because when you're in the algorithm of Facebook or Twitter and you're not getting the same Facebook posts and tweets as me, you might not ever even see someone making a good case for feminism. A lot of people don't even understand what feminism is,
Mm-hmm.
much less some of the nuances within it and how big of an umbrella it is. I did like that this movie embraced in the third slash fourth wave feminism concepts of like intersectionality and equity being important.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially, like, if we're gonna make a distinction, and it's funny because if you just look at the history of Barbie, second wave is essentially going to be women can be doctors too, and should be able to and even encouraged to, what is it, dress like men, do the same things, be able and allowed to do the same things. And essentially that's where the fight was. And then since
Mm-hmm.
then it's grown a whole nother level where it includes more intersectionality, and including transgender, like there's, which is where we get the term turf, right? Like folks who exclude it from their feminism and then folks
Right.
who don't. But then women can be complicated. They don't have to be just this
Yeah.
version of like an American dream, and etc. I like that they embrace those concepts. Also, like anything I see from that like bigoted right wing bubble of this movie is, I think the phrase they used was grooming, but they're talking about how there is a trans actress in this movie who, in my opinion, crushed the role.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely incredible performance.
Yeah.
But just the concept, like it's so far gone, which is why I'm kind of laughing at like when you're talking about people who are bigoted about this. Like I'm not trying to deny that that exists, but it is so like the logic of it inherently is so absurd because when you have one actress
Hmm.
out of 73 performers in the film and now suddenly this is a radical work of art. I'm sorry, that's just like that's literally not reality to have
Yeah.
1/73 of something as if it's just that's not even a thing or an issue, and that's just not going to have that crazy effect where we're going to brainwash society by the millions
Yeah.
because of this one actress. I did think it was great, and I love that they included that person. I'm
Yeah,
glad that
and
this
they
movie
were
was mindful of
yeah, they were
fantastic,
fantastic. I mean,
great
it's
timing.
so good. Yeah.
I think the first time I saw the actress was in Miss Maisel, and then that's when I
Oh,
first
okay.
Googled them, learned
Okay.
about them. But actual like quality comedy chops, like a
Hmm.
quality which that's kind of one of the only things if someone does want to say if and usually it's masking the bigotry, but they go, it shouldn't be based on identity, it should be based on qualifications. Well, this person's fucking qualified. So if like that argument gets to go out the window, they did an absolutely great job.
Right.
And if somebody wants to live in their bubble and in fear and filter out those voices, eventually reality is gonna like you're going to have to encounter it at some point, which is how a lot of
Hmm.
people actually have their minds changed. There's people who just want to go to the movies and then they encounter the movie of Barbie and are now saying like, "Oh, I thought that performer was great. Oh, wait, that was a trans actress. Oh, okay. It's apparently I've been dealing with this like straw person concept of what that's like." And then this movie having a black female president with Issa Rae, great casting there. Having Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie is great casting, regardless of her identity and preferences. Like, absolutely, overall, they did a good job of having those things, but also every person was very well qualified to
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
crush the role that they were given. I think this movie nailed the assignment. I don't know how much it moves the needle, but is it possible that somebody would actually encounter this movie and they're not getting bogged down in the ideas of it and the weight of it, and they're instead just having, sure, the 4-year-old and their family probably isn't having the deepest conversation on the way home. There might be a couple follow-up questions of what was the deal with that,
Right.
but
Like
I'm
why did they make depressing Barbie? Like like how
yeah.
they had that little
Yeah,
commercial
why
like
was her makeup weird or something? Yeah. God, that was brilliant.
it was so
The
good.
fake product placement in the movie was so
Yeah.
good. But there is a possibility that like you have, let's say, a preteen, a 15-year-old daughter, her dad takes her to
Hmm.
the movies, and they have a really good talk afterward
Oh
about
sure.
what this is like and
Yeah.
what the pressures of what feminism, what it's like to be a young woman in society today, and those inherent juxtapositions, contradictions, and having to live with that. And I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of those conversations end with the dad understanding the movie, laughing at a lot of the jokes, some of it going over his head, but him not being offended or fully put off and bothered by it, not running from it, and then going, "Oh, now I finally understand a bit more what it's
Hmm.
like to be a young woman." I think movies can be very impactful in that way. You build more empathy by seeing someone else and really understanding their experience on a deeper level, and
Sure.
it could communicate it through.
Yeah. But at the same time, it also all depends on how open you are to those ideas and that way of thinking, you know. And maybe it's true. Maybe the fact that I am so already used to this way of thinking and all that, that for me, a movie like this is not heady. You know, it's kind of like this is the trajectory that we're kind of going now forward with, where you see even the superhero movies putting more female characters in front of your face and all that. So it's been a transition that we've been seeing happening for years now. Now, I know there's a section of people out there who are just like, oh, here we go. Everyone's becoming woke now. So, yeah, of course, we're
You
going
might
to
get some
have,
walkouts in this movie,
yeah, which I
of
did
course.
have last night. There was
At what
three
point?
people that walked out with still a good 20 minutes left in the movie. They walked out like that.
Did it seem like they walked out because they weren't enjoying it, or they were offended by
I
something?
think they just weren't enjoying it, to be honest with you. I
Okay.
think it's like, and like I said, the
Or the
majority,
babysitter called and said, "We have an emergency." Sometimes
who
that's what
knows? Who
happens. You
who
never
knows?
quite know, but okay. It's not
Yeah.
like a certain thing is said and they go, and walk out.
No, it wasn't anything like that.
That was
Again, I just
okay.
think a lot of people were not expecting this type of movie. I really, that's
Yeah.
how it felt like to me, and again, I saw it in the faces of like the parents or the faces of some other people who went to this movie thinking it was going to be, again, a nice rompy Lego movie type of thing, but they didn't get that. It was a smart movie to the point where anyone who has an open mind can see where this movie was going and what this movie was trying to portray.
Yeah.
If you are so closed minded to all that stuff, it could go either way. It could either be like, well, that was dumb. I didn't get any of that stuff. Or stop pushing your female agenda on me, Mr. or Mrs. It could be like
I
one
hope
of
those
those
people are
things.
so bothered. I hope they're shaking on the way home. I hope that they cry at some point.
Right.
I don't want to underemphasize a lot of laughing.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
one of the hardest I've
Oh,
laughed in a
yeah.
movie. I'm going to put it in my life. Like it's right up there with up until you get to like the comedies of comedies. Like for me, when I was young, Napoleon Dynamite, Zoolander, Anchorman kind of stuff. Like I had a good 5 to 10 outbursts of hardcore laughter and another good 10 chuckles throughout, which is 3 is a pretty good number when I'm going to the movies by myself. You know what I mean? Like this was
Yeah.
damn funny of a
Yeah.
movie, damn entertaining overall, high quality all the way around. But then also we've spent a lot of time talking about already the depth of it was there at the same time.
Let's just quickly talk about the things we love the most and the things, if there was anything that you liked the least. So quickly for me, it was, I think the overall star of this movie is actually Ryan Gosling. I think he is like the runaway star in my opinion, because just how much of a parody he was in kind of the social awareness of how men are in the world today, and how that can quickly change, good or bad, in any given instance. I just love that. And plus, the chemistry he had with Margot was so good too. Like they worked well, really, off of each other. The showdown that
Oh
he
yeah.
had with Simu Liu was just so
Oh,
hilarious. The little rivalry they had there is just so funny. Like both of them did a really good job. But I'm seeing a lot of people really talking about Ryan. Like it's Ryan for them. That was like the big hit of this movie. And I agree. I definitely agree with that. I think Michael Cera too. It's a nice little, like, even though he was kind of like a background kind of character, whenever he showed up, and it was actually pretty funny. The one thing I didn't like, and again, I've talked about this before, is I'm tired of Kate McKinnon's shtick. It's the same shtick every time, And yes, it did fit in a movie like this because she was the crazy Barbie, the abused Barbie that everyone kind of has, right? But it's a little bit too much for me, I think, already. I think I just have that already in my head. Like every time she shows up, I'm like, all right, what wacky shit is she gonna do now? Oh, there she goes. She's going to do her
yeah.
splits. She's gonna have that crazy look on her face. But I love how they kind of acknowledge it too, and they kind of poke fun at it. So that made me not cringe so much at it. But it's still it's that's when it. And the whole Will Ferrell character, I feel like it's a character that he's played multiple times already. So I felt like it was just a
Just the
regurgitation.
buffoon,
Yeah.
the hilarious, absurd, taking himself too seriously.
Yeah.
He's obviously in on the joke, but his character isn't.
Right.
When he takes the key card and tries to exit and he throws it
He
at the
just throws
thing,
it. Yeah.
that's when yeah. That was one of those moments where I just laughed way too hard.
Yeah, he just like throws it, and it's like, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, we didn't need it." Like when the thing just opens.
So good. So good. Kate McKinnon, I think that because of this role, it worked really well.
Yeah.
And if it had been just she's a random character that happens to have that same comic timing and the
Yeah.
shtick that Kate McKinnon does. But overall, I thought that was why that character worked for me. I'm a Gosling head through and through. To me, I've said it before, he is the Paul Newman, Steve McQueen of
Sure.
our era for me. And I just looked at his Letterboxd. I've seen 20 of his top 20 most popular movies. Like
Wow.
when they rank them out. Everything below that, there's a couple like horror films, and then a bunch of documentaries. Basically, it's essentially every single movie except 2. Um, I actually wasn't that impressed, but I have such a critical eye for him where I
Sure.
am aware of anytime he's doing something differently than where like, oh, he could have done that a little better. But overall, he crushed the assignment. I'm gonna just say cast. Like I'm not gonna get into every performance. Cast, top to bottom, writing, directing, the cinematography, and the set design was very clever. The one thing that like I didn't love was there was one time there were pink animated clouds too, but it's the same moment when the car flips upside down and lands, and
Mhm.
those pink
Oh,
animated clouds
okay.
happen
Yeah,
like a Roger Rabbit Space
right.
Jam concept.
Kinda like
Why was there only one time? Unless I missed other times, but it was literally animated like pencil like that to me didn't Grease, that kind of thing happens in Grease, like in the intro, right? But it's
Mhm.
essentially that. There might be a name for that, but it's augmented animation.
Mhm.
But if that was a thing throughout, I must have missed it. But I think that only happened one time, and so that jarred me out of the movie for a split second. I go, "Huh, is that going to be a thing now? Are we now in some new dimension?" And maybe they're doing it with the transition from the real world to the fake world. But everything was basically like our normal world, and then sets, like very obvious. And not going to go on about it, but they put a lot of thought into it, and they were referencing like old Hollywood sets where they would paint a background that looks
Yeah.
realistic, but it's obviously not. They did a lot of that stuff. I thought it was brilliant. The opening number and the music, absolutely brilliant throughout, but especially the opening number where it gets you in the mood for it. The Lizzo song that
Yeah.
you missed in the first time you saw it
Yeah. It sets the
in the
tone.
test screening.
It totally sets the tone. Yeah.
Brilliant. And it's introducing, and I'm wondering too in the test screening if there's some feedback they got. We need this to be funnier quicker. We need it to make sense quicker. Get into it more. If I have a complaint, um, a bigger one, the only thing I can really think of is there was a little too much back and forth, and it's maybe more of a me thing. I don't like it in the road trip comedy when the friends fight and bicker and they go back and forth, and we know they're going to work through it, and we just spend too much time in that moment.
Mhm.
There was a lot of Ken versus Barbie land back and forth, the real world and this world back and forth. I wish it'd been a little bit more succinct. I don't know how I would have necessarily done it. I'm not even saying it's possible or that I would have even liked it more. But the times that I enjoyed the movie the least was when I felt a little bogged down by spending so much time in that conflict mode. Whereas if they'd done maybe a 10 to 15-minute shorter movie and it was just a succinct version,
Mhm.
because it ends up being this silly beach battle scene, which is pretty absurd. I don't know that you need to have as much work showing the Barbies getting the revolution up and running.
Mhm.
Maybe you didn't need as much work in the real world showing Ryan, like there was montages. Yes, Ryan Gosling discovering the patriarchy was unbelievable. Because
It's
it's
so
really
funny.
dark humor if
Yeah.
you look at like patriarchy and then also the consumerist messaging in this movie. We spent a lot of time talking about feminism, but if you look at like patriarchy as a force of evil in this world, of really, which I'm not going to get into. I don't need to keep fighting bigots here. Just leave a comment if you want. I'll fight you there. But if you look at like repressing people, holding them down, restricting their freedom, and anti-democratic concepts that are inherent in patriarchy, it's really dark gallows humor.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing, and I don't know, and there were times I'm thinking this might be bothering the audience who's wearing pink and girlfriend's night out. My honest guess, and I don't know, is that it was more gallows humor. That it was like, yeah, this sucks, and we should be making fun of this. And it's not like this is a new concept and we're rubbing it in people's faces. It's just like this is showing how absurd that thing is that I deal with every day at work. But overall, I wish it'd been a little bit tighter in that period of the movie where we're doing a little bit too much back and forth, and the mission where they have to get the Barbies to revolutionize
Mhm.
through the end, and then Margot Robbie, because and maybe it's because I had such a heady experience with the movie, but even the ending when Barbie is finally like we're going through like literal waves of progression of this character until she's having this super meta moment of I don't know what I want. And we spent
Mhm.
a lot of time in that space and having conversations with Will Ferrell, her friends, Ken, who are we? What do we want? And then finally, she has a convo with the creator of Barbie, and it's a very deep convo. Like it actually reminds me, to throw in another movie reference, of The Matrix, kind of conversation
With the
with like the
architect.
architect or
Yep.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yep.
But then when it wrapped, maybe I would have liked the movie less if they hadn't spent so much time there, because when it wrapped, I thought, holy shit, they did that. And I loved the way it ended. So overall, if we're talking scores, I give it 5 out of 5.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a big score. Touch base on some quick things. They did do the animation stuff like throughout the movie. Every time there was like the sparkles coming out of Ken and all that, that's the same type of animation as the
Okay,
little
I
heart
saw that.
stuff.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Maybe
so
this one
it
just felt a little out of nowhere, but yeah, you're right.
sure.
That wasn't the
It
only
it
time.
felt like
Good call.
it felt like an emoji. You know, like when you like
Yeah.
text someone or you do like kind of like the live
The
TikTok and all
plus,
that,
the
and then
thumbs up
you
kind
see
of.
like the,
Yeah,
like gang 'em, all that kind of stuff like that. It felt like a sticker, So I
that
think
makes sense.
that was kind of like the look they were going with there.
Okay.
Um, and I do also agree, like I felt like there was some editing issues still, which I also thought was there when I saw it the first time back in February. Like
They
a
didn't
lot
listen
of
to your feedback.
hey, I'm a
They listened to
small
Renee.
voice in a giant pond. Um, but yeah, like the first encounter Margot had with Ruth, I thought there were some moments there where they stayed on a shot too long, where there wasn't anything going on, and I thought they could have like tightened that up a little bit. And lastly, I that whole beach fight scene between the Kens, it felt very Rocky Horror type to me, because
Yeah,
they're
honestly,
singing
I loved
and
it.
like, oh my god, it was so good, it was
That's
so
for
great,
me. I love a
yeah.
musical, and the dance fight,
And then it transitioned
brilliant.
into like the giant, like kind of like almost grease montage kind of thing going on. I'm just like, oh my god,
So good.
you're doing so much good stuff here. Yeah, for me, I gave it a 4. I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I liked
We
it.
don't do half rankings. Is it closer to
I
4.5 or
don't.
3.5?
It's
If
definitely
you had to
closer.
lean,
Sure, it's definitely closer to 4.5 for me.
okay.
But yeah, it's not a 4. It's not. I'm sorry. It's not a 5. Unlike the next movie we're going to be talking about. Ooh, I'm giving a hint. Oh, a little
I'm not
hinty
gonna.
hint.
Yeah, I'm gonna tease
Oh.
mine. People might be bothered by my score on this next movie, one way or the other. But
Yeah.
my 5 out of 5 is going to be surprising in light of where we go. I'm excited for this. Okay.